8 years ago, in Germany, Kiritsugu Emiya and his wife, Irisviel von Einzbern, welcomed the birth of their daughter, Irisviel. Though Kiritsugu fears that he will betray Irisviel in the upcoming Fourth Holy Grail War, she assures him that he is a good man who will uphold their ideals. Kirei Kotomine, a priest, learns 3 years ago that he has been chosen to participate in the Holy Grail War. Kirei's father Risei, the war's moderator on behalf of the Catholic Church, and another participant, Tokiomi Tosaka, arrange for Kirei to become Tokiomi's magecraft pupil in order to give Tokiomi an advantage and help Kirei cope with the death of his wife. Kirei Metu pays a visit to his childhood friend Aoi Tosaka and her daughters, Rin and Sakura, in Fuyuki City a year ago. Kirei is shocked to learn Sakura has been adopted by the Metu family, who want a magical heir, and is horrified to learn what has been done to her. In front of his father, Zoken, Kirei strikes a deal to implant himself with parasitic worms that will provide him with the magic he needs to fight in the upcoming war. Sakura will be freed and returned to her family if he wins the Grail. In the present, Kenneth Archibald Elmeloy dismisses and humiliates one of his students, Waver Velvet, who believes that anyone can become a great mage through hard work and practice, rather than by birth. Waver decides to correct his teacher by stealing Kenneth's artifact, which is required to summon a servant, in order to join the war himself. After receiving the Excalibur scabbard, Iri is hopeful that they will be able to summon King Arthur of the Saber class, but Kiritsugu is concerned that Arthur's chivalry will clash with his pragmatic methods. As Kiritsugu, Tokiomi, Kirei, and Waver summon their servants, Kiritsugu and Iri are astounded to see that the summoned King Arthur is actually a woman. Waver requires assistance in commanding his servant rider, Alexander the Great, who is more interested in how the world has changed since his time and plans to conquer it once the war is won. Saber has formed a negative opinion of Kiritsugu, believing him to be cold-hearted, but is surprised to see him sharing a tender moment with his daughter Ilia. Saber also admits that she admires Kiritsugu and Iri's desire to save the world, just as she desires to save Britain. Ryunosuke Uryu, a serial killer in Fuyuki City, has murdered an entire family except for a young boy in order to summon a demon but inadvertently summons the servant Castor, Bluebeard. When Uryu offers the boy as a sacrifice to Castor, Castor pretends to let him go before killing him with a horrific Cthulhu-esque monster. Uryu, ecstatic to meet someone as sadistic as him, swears to follow Castor wherever he goes and becomes his master. Kirei orders Assassin to kill Tokiomi after learning that the 7th and final master has been chosen, only for Assassin to be killed by Tokiomi's servant archer, Gilgamesh, while attempting to break into his mansion. Kirei declares his resignation from the war as a result of Assassin's death and is granted asylum by Risei. This, however, is a ruse by Kirei, Risei, and Tokiomi. Assassin is a group of several dozen people. Kirei can send the assassins to spy on them without being suspected because everyone else believes he's out of the game. The writer is informed of Assassin's death by Waver, but the latter is only concerned with defeating President Clinton, acquiring his country's military weapons, and having a good time. Saber and Iri arrive in Fuyuki City to meet Kiritsugu, but because it is Iri's first time abroad, they decide to tour the city instead. Meanwhile, Kiritsugu meets with his assistant Miyahizo, who informs him that the other masters believe Iri is Saber's master and that she has smuggled in all of the weapons they need for the war, including his contender pistol. Saber notices another servant at the harbor while Iri is enjoying himself at the beach. When they arrive, they are met by Lancer, who challenges Saber to a duel. Saber and Lancer fight each other while complimenting each other on their abilities and chivalry. Kiritsugu and Miya are scouting the battle at the same time, with Kiritsugu spotting Lancer's hidden master. Kiritsugu notices Assassin, who is relaying the battle to Kirei and Tokiomi, just as he is about to snipe him. Lancer's master instructs him to use his noble phantasms, Gi Dirge, the anti-magic spear, and Gi Bid, the cursed spear that causes unhealed wounds. Saber recognizes Lancer as Diarmuid of the love spot based on these, and Lancer discovers Saber's identity after temporarily dispelling the invisibility spell on her sword with Gi Dirge. Saber, whose left tendon was injured by Lancer's Gibid, is about to give it her all when Ryder, who had been watching the battle from afar, rides down to the harbor on his chariot, interrupting the battle. The rider approaches Lancer and Saber and invites them to join his army, but both decline. Kenneth, Lancer's master, appears and mocks Waver, but Ryder defends him. Archer and Berserker soon join the fight. Berserker, Kirei's servant, is a black knight shrouded in a fog that makes measuring his strength impossible. Archer uses his noble phantasm, Gate of Babylon, to attack Berserker, but he keeps evading and using Archer's weapons against him. To avoid further exposing Archer's noble phantasm, Tokiomi uses a command seal to order him to withdraw from the battle, much to Archer's chagrin. Berserker pursues Saber after seeing her, revealing his ability to transform anything he wields into a noble phantasm. Lancer defends Saber out of chivalry, but Kenneth forces him to aid Berserker with a command spell. Ryder, on the other hand, paralyzes Berserker and warns Kenneth to flee or he will side with Saber. Ryder tells Saber that he will only duel her or Lancer once Berserker, Kenneth, and Lancer have left. Castor watches the battle through a crystal ball and believes Saber is his long-lost love, while Kirei discovers that the church was being watched by a familiar. Iri and Saber are on their way to Einzbern Castle when they come across Castor. Castor believes Saber is Jeanne d'Arc, but Saber corrects him and drives him away. Castor returns to his lair, convinced that Jeanne has lost her memories. Kenneth chastises Lancer at his hotel for failing to kill Saber. Kenneth's fiancée, Soloi Nuatari Sophiari, defends Lancer by supplying him with mana and has fallen in love with him due to his magical love spot. Kenneth realizes Saber's master has arrived when the hotel's occupants are ordered to evacuate. Kiritsugu Emiya use explosives to blow up the hotel after ensuring that all civilians have been evacuated. Kirei discovers Mia, but she escapes thanks to Kiritsugu's smoke bomb. When the assassins inform Kirei, Rise, and Tokiomi that Castor and Yuryu have been kidnapping and sacrificing children, Rise is disgusted by their senseless murders and fears that they are jeopardizing the war's secrecy. In a meeting, Archer persuades Kirei to spy on the other masters and discover what drives them in order to discover his own desires. Rise informs all active masters that the war will be paused until Castor, whose child murders are gaining public attention, is destroyed, with an additional command spell as a reward. Despite Saber's protests that they should prioritize stopping Castor's atrocities, Kiritsugu plans to use the hunt for Castor to attack the other masters in Einzbern Castle. As Kiritsugu confesses to Iri that he would rather flee with her and their daughter to live in peace somewhere, Iri detects Castor returning from the forest with more children to be sacrificed and dispatches Saber to pursue him. Castor summoned monsters ambush and corner Saber until Lancer appears and joins forces with her. Kenneth, who had survived the hotel bombing thanks to his volumen hydragerum, a massive magical blob of mercury, infiltrates the castle to duel Saber's master. Kiritsugu uses his Calico M950 to avoid Kenneth and then launches a surprise attack with his contender pistol. Iri and Mia are about to flee through the woods when Iri notices Kirei approaching. Iri and Mia decide to confront him rather than avoid him in order to protect Kiritsugu. However, they are both outmatched. Meanwhile, Kiritsugu uses his contender pistol to injure Kenneth. Kenneth decides to strengthen Hydragerum's defenses even further, believing the attack was a fluke. Saber and Lancer continue to fight Castor's endless waves of demonic creatures, which are made possible by his noble phantasm, his grimoire. Saber clears the way for Lancer, who uses Gi Dirge to pierce Castor's grimoire, cutting off his source of mana and instantly destroying his minions, causing him to flee. Kiritsugu finally appears after hiding from an enraged and injured Kenneth and shoots him with his contender once more. Because the contender employs anti-magic bullets, Kenneth's Hydragerum not only fails to protect him but also significantly amplifies his injury. Lancer rushes to his unconscious master's aid, while Saber rushes to save Iri from Kirei. While Kirei is questioning Iri about Kiritsugu, an assassin alerts him to Saber's approach, prompting him to stab Iri before fleeing. Iri survives because Saber implanted Avalon, Saber's magical healing scabbard, inside her and goes on to heal Mia. Kenneth awakens with his body tethered to a bed. Sola informs Kenneth that Kiritsugu's bullets destroyed his magic circuits, and he will never be able to use magic again. Kenneth has no choice but to relinquish Lancer's command to Sola. Despite the fact that Sola has become his new master, Lancer wishes to remain loyal to Kenneth, but Sola persuades him to continue fighting with her, using Kenneth's honor as a justification. Despite Saber and Iri's wishes to stop Castor, Kiritsugu decides to pursue Kenneth. Meanwhile, Waver and Ryder find Castor's lair and are horrified to see his victims' mutilated bodies. Ryder kills an assassin and drives away two more before setting Castor's lair on fire. With Waver and Ryder now knowing their secret, Tokiomi orders Kirei to send his assassins to spy on them. Despite her young age, Rin is determined to follow in her father's footsteps as a great mage. Tokiomi sends Aoi and Rin away for their own safety as the Holy Grail War approaches. The Fuyuki serial killer has kidnapped several children at Rin's new school, including her best friend Kotone. Rin travels alone to Fuyuki City in order to save Kotone. She eventually finds Yuryu using a magic bracelet to hypnotize children using a mana detector given to her by her father. Rin follows Yuryu to his hiding place where he discovers her. Rin overloads Yuryu's bracelet with mana, destroying it, rendering him incapacitated, and freeing the children from his control. Rin returns home, only to be ambushed by one of Castor's monsters. However, Kirei saves her and later hands her over to Aoi. Kirei, who had been spying on them through Assassin, orders him to continue monitoring Kirei. Ryder and Waver unexpectedly arrive at Einzbern Castle. Ryder declares his intention to have a peaceful discussion with her and Archer about kingship and the wishes they wish to be granted by the Grail. Saber believes that a king should serve his people selflessly and wishes to use the power of the Grail to save Britain. Ryder criticizes her, claiming that Saber's emotional distance from her subjects is to blame for their discontent, and proposes his own ideal, namely that people serve the king, whose extravagant ambitions inspire them in turn. The arrival of the assassins interrupts their conversation. When they refuse Ryder's invitation to the feast, he summons his noble phantasm Ionian Hetairoi, the armies of Macedonia, which are made up of his loyal soldiers who become servants after death. Ryder and his army easily decimate every single assassin. With their meeting over, Ryder tells Saber he no longer recognizes her as a king and departs. A conflicted Saber reveals to Iri that one of her knights left Camelot because he was dissatisfied with her rule. Thanks to the information provided by the assassins before their annihilation, Tokiomi and Kirei now know about Ryder's noble phantasm and decide to let him attack the other servants first before engaging him. While Mia transports Iri and Saber to their new headquarters, Kiritsugu goes over his information on the whereabouts of the other contestants. Saber notices Iri's strange behavior at their new headquarters, forcing her to admit that her powers have weakened. Archer questions Kirei about what he learned from spying on the other contestants and points out that Kirei has taken an unusually strong interest in Korea, despite the fact that he poses only a minor threat. Archer deduces from this that Kirei enjoys witnessing the pain and suffering of others. Though initially hesitant to admit his dark nature, Kirei eventually succumbs. At this point, the command spells reappear on his hand, indicating that he is still a contestant. Since he currently has no servant, however, Archer hints that he should kill another master and take over their servant. Castor and Yuryu return to their lair and are dismayed to see their artwork destroyed by Ryder's fire. Yuryu cheers Castor up by sharing his twisted belief that God, whom Castor despises the most for Jean's death, is merely a bystander who enjoys watching humans do whatever they want. Castor, inspired by his master's idea, devises a grand spectacle for God. Meanwhile, Waver begins to doubt his ability to be a worthy master for Ryder, but Ryder encourages him to believe in himself. Waver, Ryder, Saber, and Iri become aware of the magic emanating from Mayan River. When they arrive, they see Castor summon a massive demonic monster. Ryder informs the other contestants, who form a temporary alliance to stop Castor before his monster destroys the city. With Ryder leading the vanguard, Saber joins him to give Lancer an opening to use his spears on Castor. Like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy this video.